Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this Into Games a digital talk. Firstly, just an apology, just a massive apology if you've managed to, if you tried to join us just a little bit before the start and you will have been shunted into an unusual website. It's just the URL on the Luma page was slightly incorrect, and that is entirely my bad. This is the problem with sort of having a lot of events and a lot of URLs and a lot of URLs being pasted in a lot of places. But I've just sent out a message out on the Luma, hopefully, so everyone gets the correct link, and I can see that people are in the chat. So thank you, everyone, for commenting and saying hello and letting me know that you made it here nice and safely. Welcome to this. It's Thursday, which can only mean that we're doing yet another event. And today's event is, I suppose, it's slightly different from our discipline deep dives. So first of all, if you're unfamiliar with Into Games and what we do here, hello, hi, welcome. I'm Jonas. I'm the community manager and events manager for Into Games. Into Games is an organization that's just working really hard to make the UK games industry just more accessible to work in, really looking at the barriers that sort of exist to get into this industry in the first place. It's a particularly hard industry to work in, very passion driven, and not nearly enough junior opportunities for the number of sort of juniors and entry-level talent out there. But in particular, there's a really massive weight against people from low-income backgrounds or working class backgrounds as well. And Into Games puts a particular focus on looking at those communities and trying to figure out how we can help them. And one of the things that we do is we put on these talks, these events. We do them completely for free. We look for people from the games industry who understand the sort of the difficulty of getting in, and understand that a lot of that issue is that resources and information are not necessarily freely available. And so we largely sort of look at what those barriers look like, what could stop people getting in the industry, and also just trying to sort of remove a lot of, sort of demystify a lot of the games industry. So really just trying to open the door and help people understand what it means to work here and what that's like. And so with these digital talks, these are ad hoc, these are sort of more like free flowing subjects that we realize that they have a particular strength or a particular sort of niche that they fill. And today is no different. So I hope that gives you a bit of an idea of what we do at Into Games. We do a whole other bunch of stuff as well, as well as these events. We've got a Discord full of 9,000 plus people. I'm the community manager of that Discord. If you're interested, there is a little link somewhere in the YouTube description that will take you over to our Discord. Feel free to jump in. It's a learning community with just hundreds and thousands of people who either work in the games industry or want to find work in the games industry. And there's a lot of learning and sharing and sort of skilling up together. And we also do our own courses. So if there's something in particular that you're keen to learn and you don't know it, it could be that one of our sprint courses is right for you. And those sprint courses are courses that they last 3 weeks. They're in the evenings only. So if you've got a sort of a 9 to 5 or a full-time education, it's possible to do these courses hopefully in tandem with that responsibility. And by doing these courses, you get to spend those full 3 weeks with, a real professional, someone that actually does this work, someone that's actually been doing it for years, as they kind of take you through a brief or a workflow and you work through it with them. The sprint courses, they're very cool. I'm a big fan of them. Highly recommend. So go check that all out. Links all down below. If you're interested in the sprint courses, I can show you a link for that later. But there'll be something in the YouTube description that tells you all about it. But anyways, enough about me and the corporate entity that I represent. Let's get to some content and let's get to our guests. So today's talk is called Breaking the Negative Spiral. And what that really means is it's just sort of acknowledging that, hey, the games industry isn't all like, I don't know, it's not all platinum trophies and achievement lists on Steam. Sometimes it's game over screens and sweat and tears and years and years and years of stress to make a very fun game. And it's often not acknowledged just how negative that environment can be, especially with how hard it is to get into the industry in the first place, and especially how hard it is to stay in the industry at the moment. So to sort of acknowledge that, we're going to have a guest come up and speak. Their name is Kevin Davey, and Kevin's just sort of really here to talk a lot about sort of existing in a world of negativity, existing through a life of sort of negative experiences and how that shapes an individual, especially with their mental health, and just talking about sort of trying to, I don't know, in this modern day and age, sort of being able to live in a slightly more positive state despite all of that, and kind of still have positive experiences despite all of that. So without further ado, I bring Kevin onto the stage. Hello, Kevin. How's it
Hello.
going?
Oh, I'm very well, thank you. Just want to say thanks to everybody for actually giving their time to come and see the talk, and it's such an honor to be invited to kind of come and talk to people. There's something I've always wanted to do, is to just be able to help somebody in some way or another. So if at least one person watching this is impacted enough to say, hey, do you know what, I need to think about things in a slightly different way, then it's all worth it for me.
Nice. I've very huge amount of confidence that yeah, there's a lot to get through here, and a lot to learn and a lot to take away. To just people in the audience, by the way, feel free to chat throughout the entire thing. I'll be reading the comments. If there's anything pertinent, we can bring it up in conversation. And then
I don't think I have access to any comments. I can't really see anything here, so
that's fine. I will
you have to
be
be
your
you've been my instigator of comments. Just bring it
exactly.
in.
I'll be your channel. And then when we sort of reach the end of the sort of talk section, assuming that we have time and that we have energy and that we're all in a good space, we can go into some questions. We can do like a little bit of a light Q&A. So just, if you've got questions, put them in the chat, and I'll do my best to make sure that they're addressed and answered towards the end. But yes, as I said, feel free to talk throughout. For example, Dan Tonkin in the comments says, "Hi, Kevin." And
Hi Dan.
exactly, yeah. So hello everyone. So Kevin, when you're ready, do you want to just reshare your bits and bobs with me here in our little
Yeah.
studio, and then we can get going.
I need to make sure I don't share anything confidential.
You've got like your 1,000,001 NDA'd projects, like just
Do
one.
you know what? I had to break them all down. I'd be like, no, save them, drop them, because you just there's work on so much stuff. You have to have so many windows open. Am I light enough? Do I need any more window light, or am I a bit dark?
I think you're very visible. I'm getting the auburn red tones of your hair through. Really
It's the
giving those
first time you can actually
autumnal.
see the length of my hair as well, because I always have it in a ponytail, so not many people gauge the length, and it's actually down here. So.
Nice, brilliant. No, you're giving those autumn sort of tones to everyone. Really reminding us that we're getting into the autumnal season. Now with that, let me just set
You
up
should
the
have my
screen.
screen, so it should
Yeah,
be visible.
I've got it. Let me just pop that away, and we'll pop that up there. Beautiful stuff. So, what we're going to do for this talk is, Kevin and I, we're both going to be on screen throughout the entire thing. But Kevin, this is your talk. So when you're ready, take it away.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I guess it's probably worth pointing out for those who don't know who I am, or probably just seen the thumbnail and gone, "Who's that guy?" My name is Kevin. I put a QR code on every slide because I'm aware that this goes, onto the internet afterwards, and it's just nice at any point if somebody's watching this and says, "Oh, damn, that's something that's drawn my attention. I need to find out more." It's easy just to do that than try to scroll through a whole hour-long session to find a QR code. So I'm based near Guildford. I've been near Guildford since 2010. 3 years in the industry as a freelancer. It has been more, but as officially as a full-time freelancer, that's my time span as a career as a freelancer. I've worked on 64 games up until this point in that 3.5 year period. Full disclaimer, they're not full games. I mean, a lot of them are. So like Lies of P and stuff like that are full titles where we've done the entire process. But I also work with a lot of outsourcers as well. So yeah, sometimes you'll be on a project for a day or a week, and then you'll move on to a different project, and then you'll go back to that project, but you work on another project, and you just move around, which is why I was like, there's so many windows going on, and it just accumulates over time to something that looks quite impressive, but in retrospect, it's not always the full thing. So like, some games take years, and there's a lot of dialogue. I'm not always part of that. That also includes DLCs and seasonal content. So any games that like have a season, and they add a new content to it. Like I think Warhammer did a thing with World of Tanks and stuff, and it was like that was their seasonal content, and so that also adds to that pile. I know it's not game related, but I thought it's just worth mentioning how busy we are, because I've also done TV shows, films, audiobooks, and I'm a sound designer for The Quiet Things, which is my lovely partner's game, Silver Script Games, where we really talk about mental health, and we really sort of go into trying to break taboos and touchy subjects that never normally really get talked about. And that's kind of really an advocate for a lot of who I am, what's really kind of shaped me in wanting to help people so much. Because when you go to these events and you see people that are impacted by these games in a positive way, it really kind of makes you go, well, maybe this was the reason why I should be here. And the 64 credits is great, but this is kind of what's more important to me anyway. I'm a mental health first aider and advocate, so I've done courses with Safe in Our World, which is a charity for video games mental health. Yep, big thumbs up. Because like with myself going through a lot of mental health issues and stuff, it was important to understand what it is I might be going through, and this is just how I work. I have to sort of break something apart and really figure out how it works, and maybe there's some information there that I could use, like, because I'm now relating to these experiences, that I could help other people with. It always comes great from an authentic voice, somebody who's actually experienced those things. And I'm also a writer, which I don't do as often anymore because of that, but because of being so busy, but I do write quite a lot whenever I can. Some of the games that I've worked on, I think you briefly mentioned in the description, games like Elden Ring. I came on at the end of Elden Ring, so I'm not officially credited. I came on in like the last couple of months to sort of help out with additional dialogue. So I'm not claiming to work on the entire game. Full disclaimer, I never really claim to work on anything in its full ends, because we never know. When I work with a lot of outsourcers, you don't know where in the chain you are. You could be right at the beginning, right at the end. You could be doing the whole thing. You just don't know. But there's some of the credits. I wanted to sort of make it a little bit fun as well. So a little fun fact, just to put it out there, because I'm so random, I like fun facts, is that in 1983, the year I was born, so that makes me 41 this year, just for anyone who's trying to do the maths, Mario Brothers was first released in the arcades in Japan, and that's the first title that Mario was self-titled in his game. It was like his own first proper game for him and his brother. And I also share my birthday with World Mental Health Day, which is obviously very important, if not more important than my actual birthday. So it's it's nice to sort of be tied to something that's doing well and helping people every single year. It's just nice.
I feel like part of that could be like an ARG where you secretly put a password in, and now people can figure out your birthday or something. And
you could do. I mean, when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's interesting. It's my birthday," and it's just like, "Oh yeah, no, it's every year on my birthday." So that's fine. I'm happy to share it with something that's meaningful.
As long as none of your passwords sort of are just your birthday straight, then we're fine.
Yeah, no, I'm not that silly. Come on. Right, who is this talk for? I think you kind of mentioned it at the beginning anyway, and that's sort of like people that are looking to get into the industry who might be from an underrepresented background. I'm not claiming here to have the same struggles as anybody else. Who might be somebody of color or somebody, like underrepresented people. My struggles are just unique to myself and from my life experiences growing up as a child and so on. But it's just good to acknowledge that, if you are in those categories, whether it's slightly similar to mine or, whatever, then this is for you. Anybody who's thinking of applying for the industry but feel that there's too many barriers to overcome, like you mentioned, like the lack of resources and so on. Maybe you just maybe you think you're too old, or maybe you've got too much on and you've got a family and all these sort of things, and you just kind of like, this is where I want to be, but I don't know how to get there. This is where my struggles have all been. So I've always been in the games industry. I just struggled to get there, and I sort of found my way eventually. But I'll share with that as I go through the thing. People who might have imposter syndrome. So obviously it's nice to also flag to those people who are in the industry who might be experiencing things like imposter syndrome, something that I go through and I have had to struggle with myself. So it's important to just recognize those people as well. And then obviously anybody who's genuinely just struggling with negativity around mental health, it's good to sort of, talk to you as well. You're all valid, you're all here. Let's have this conversation. So my background, for anybody who's interested, is I grew up in a very low income working class household. My father was a binman. He worked around rubbish bins and tips and stuff all of my life. My mum was a lollipop lady. This was a lot of the catalyst to how I was bullied at school, and I didn't get on very well with kids. I was quite a loner child, if I'm honest. In hindsight, having looked back, I used to go to work with him quite a lot. So I dropped out of school at the age of 13. So to stay out of trouble, I was kind of made to kind of go with him. And I used to fix things that people used to throw away, and it kind of helped me a little bit with troubleshooting and looking at things and breaking things apart, trying to figure it out and put it back together again. So although it was my curse being heavily bullied at school and stuff, it kind of was also, looking back, how I am now at 40, has helped me analyze things and look at things in a different way. I didn't get any formal education until 13. What I mean by that was obviously dropping out of school at 13. I was put on a government scheme where I was made to go back to college for 1 day a week, and I had to learn a trade. So in that instance, I learned catering because I like food, and it made sense for me. And I didn't want to be outside in the cold doing cars or whatever. No shade for people who do, but it wasn't for me. So I've always had an interest in that, and that kind of that area. I like to cook, so for me it's and I didn't go back until I was 30. It was when I kind of went, okay, look, my life is a bit rubbish at the moment. I really kind of need to look at myself a bit more. And I think this is where analyzing things and looking at yourself. And I think this was one of the first pivotal moments where I literally looked at myself and went, I am miserable, man. I need to do something with my life. I need to do something that I can relate to. And games courses have just become available, I think, around that time. And it was just like, well, that's what I want to do. I've always wanted to be into games. And before this point, there was no college course for it. So when I was 16, didn't exist. So it kind of made me go, well, look, I can go down that route now. I'm a bit later than other people, but that's fine. I being tested currently for ADHD, and then I have dyslexia as well, which is something I didn't realize until about a year ago. So I've used writing and stuff, and I would always be like, maybe it's just my education. That's why I feel like I'm a bit thick and I can't really write things in the right way. And it's not. I think it's just, in hindsight, looking at it, dyslexia played a massive part. But I didn't let that become a barrier for me. I just kind of went, what, I can't really write, but let's just keep doing it anyway. We can fix that in post, is what we kind of hear a lot in the audio world anyway. And I think because we mentioned about how deep should we go with this talk, the last point I put on here was the last edition, and now corrected, it was spelled wrong earlier, as I am officially clinically depressed according to the NHS and the doctors and stuff. I struggle with self-confidence and low self-esteem as a result of all of my previous trauma and past, which still follows me even to this day. Worrying about things is just something I do. Like, I even worry now about whether I'm talking too much or whether I'm not getting to the point properly or whether I'm just wasting people's lunch times. So that's just who I am. That's who I've become. But I'm, having to deal with those things on a daily basis. And I think if you're in those mindsets, it's good to sort of be able to have those conversations with yourself later. So my work history, I tried very hard to make this look nice. Really didn't. I wanted to put these points in a sort of where I was in my mental state. So, like where I was at my lowest point in my mental health. This is all hindsight, by the way. This is reflection and having to go through therapy and sort of looking back on these things. But a lot of these industries, a lot of people would have either been in, or they're in already, or they're, they feel like they can't get out of. But it's not bad to say that you can have this kind of linear line and still get there. Like I said, I've been doing this for about 3 years, so I'm very late to the party. So this is my process that's got me there. And I think it's taught me a lot of self skills along the way. So although, I do work in audio, and these are skills that you could learn through courses and stuff like that, I feel there's a lot of self skills, like how to deal with difficult situations and how to present yourself and how to mostly dealing with people who are really toxic in a work environment, if I'm honest. You just kind of have those moments of, I don't really want to be here, I don't really want to do this anymore, like that I've got no choice. Maybe money is a factoring point, maybe like you haven't learned enough skills to get yourself hired, or you just thought about it and you're gone, you know what, I do work in a kitchen and I know what it's like to work till 3 a.m, and I also still have to try and maintain money, and I have to try and maintain a life and a family and all these sort of things. And it's like, well, where do I now go? How do I get out of this? It's pointed out that it was probably around the 2014, 2016 point in this slide that I kind of realized something wasn't right with myself. Like at this point, I'd been coasting a lot, and there's a lot of habits around drinking and going out a lot, and really living a reckless lifestyle, which I think, looking back at the self-confidence and self-esteem, that's kind of a factoring point of like just drinking because that sort of makes you feel better and you don't know why, but you're doing it anyway. So there was a lot of problems there that I wasn't addressing because I didn't know about them at the time. I wasn't aware that I needed to look at my mental health. I was just in this rut of working these rubbish jobs and not knowing how to get out of them. I also struggle with taking things to a lead level, and that's something I was self-sabotaging, I guess you could say, is the right term. But like as soon as I work somewhere, they go, right, okay, you've been here long enough now, you should be a manager. I leave because it's like that responsibility of having to manage people. Like, it's hard enough to manage yourself, but like to manage your people, I always got into that habit of leaving, as you look through the lines there. Something I've worked on myself now, and I do have to do a lot of self-management being a freelancer, so I've had to learn quite like how to deal with those things, but they're stressful. They're stressful already being a freelancer and trying to maintain that lifestyle, let alone to be now responsible for somebody else. So it's hard, it's just, I never pushed myself to that level of going to the point. And I guess I really didn't feel like I needed to be there or wanted to be there. And there was always something else that was calling me down the line, which is where my journey sort of took its way. I'm babbling, by the way, so please do stop me and push me if I'm going on a bit too much.
No, I mean, I was just relating super hard as well when you were saying, like, being in that environment where you work with people that you don't necessarily like, and you sort of acknowledge that's the truth about your environment, but it's like a truth that you can't just click a button or kind of make a decision and be like, well, I'm just going to go earn my rent somewhere else. Like, it doesn't happen like that, and you can't make that decision for yourself. As doubly so when you're in those environments where you work those disgustingly long days and hours, and you don't have the time and the energy to put together a good CV and a good cover letter and to scroll through job applications and opportunities. And especially when you're in that situation as well, where you might work for with crappy people, but sometimes like they're paying you the best for your skill set that you're going to get in the immediate area. Like there's not something better out there, and it can feel really just isolating. And
I tend to find you become your environment as well. So when you're around negative people, like like I think it was when I was in manufacturing and I was working with a lot of people, and I just kept hearing it every day, somebody going, well, if we were on time, I'd do this differently. If I do this, I'd do this differently. And it got so, it just got really like deep for me, where I was just like, I was running a night shift unofficially as a manager, but I was running the night shift. And I was on night shift for like 4 years. And it was just kind of like, man, I'm going to be this person. I'm going to be 50, 60, 70 years old complaining that I wish I had done more. And that was when I just went, do you know what, tools down, man. I need to just quit my job. I looked at what courses were available before making that decision. Obviously, you don't want to, cut off your income while trying to do these things. And I was like, okay, there is a course actually for music and sound, and that is where I want to go. And that's when I kind of just put the thing in and said, you know what, I'm done. And I was a delivery driver at Asda for like the whole 2 years I was at college, just sort of working my shifts around my courses and just sort of filling in the gaps, because I still had to maintain a full-time lifestyle. Even when I was at university and I went back to uni, I was working 2 jobs. Like, you're working 2 jobs trying to maintain this kind of this lifestyle of where I am and where I want to be. And it's just hard to sort of go, let's kill that for that. And being an older student, like, you didn't get as many of the same funding that you could get if you were just straight out of college. I mean, it's changed a lot now. Like, kids are now mandatory, they have to stay in college, whatever that is, until they're a certain age. But, you know, like, there's a point where you just kind of go, I need to keep this going, but I also want to go over here. So you're still having to keep pulling yourself back. And sales, when I got into high-tech sales, I was a lot of moving around the country and traveling around a lot, and I thought, this is my opportunity to kind of take some freelance work while I'm in a hotel somewhere and do bits like away from home where I can just sort of turn off. No, that wasn't the case. And if anything, it just spiraled it even further, because now you're alone driving around the country doing things you don't want to do, around negative people. You know, every time you meet somebody, there was always a problem, and you just get into this mindset of just like, I just don't have the mental capacity to focus on myself, and I just have to, because it pays well. It's the first time I found a job that, you know, since I worked in the manufacturing industry anyway, that paid me well, and I was able to kind of not put so many hours in. But you're driving around all the time. That's where your hours are coming in. I'm not working as much, but I'm driving around. I'm not doing anything else apart from 6 hours drive to Manchester or, you know, whatever. So it's, you spiral, because you're just like, this isn't me, man. This is not where I want to be. I want to be doing that. And I see a job ad and I go, oh, I should apply for that, but I just can't apply for that yet, and so on and so on. So, you know, yeah. I found that the environment really contributed to how I was. You know, you finish your shift and everyone's complaining and they just want to go to the pub, and you're just in that life cycle, and it takes a lot to break from that and go, man, we're not the same. I don't want to do this. You know, you might be comfortable with this, but I'm not. Or maybe they're not comfortable. Maybe they just don't know how to get out. You know, there's always an alternative view on things.
And you've got a few people sort of commiserating with you in chat as well. Dan Tonkin sort of points out that you know, within the games industry, you'll get these layoffs and rejections, and then you'll scroll down LinkedIn, you'll get this advice on how to make like a perfect CV or cover letter, and then you get these top voices on LinkedIn all saying conflicting things, and it just creates this kind of like noise that is really hard to get like a consistent message from. Like you can't actually see what to do next, because you're getting a lot of conflicting sort of messaging you know, from this industry. Lucy Saskia says, you know, it is all incredibly draining. ADIYTM, I'm going to just read out the letters in your name because I'm not quite sure what else to say. It says, it's incredibly difficult to make time for yourself whilst being overwhelmed by work. I feel that a lot. So yeah, you know, lots of people really kind of commiserating and understanding that, yeah, it's not easy to take yourself from an environment that is just so incredibly draining on you and turn it into something that could be better.
Yeah, I mean, like, when I hit to the 2016, the sales side of things, that was when I kind of just killed the idea of becoming a freelancer, especially for games. You know, I started doing it alongside my work in 2013, and, you know, I had a really bad experience. Like, I was, you know, working with a friend who I really trusted. It was somebody I was at college with and uni with, and they were recruiting me to do, you know, sort of like, they were location recorders, so they were on set a lot for film and TV, and they would be sending me files while they recorded them, like at the end of the day, and then I would clean them up or whatever else, and then they just turned their back, and they just kind of, you know, put a load of bad words in about how rubbish I was and how, like, my skills are just subpar and all these problems, and they refused to pay me, and it just kind of really hit home a lot of like, oh man, this is somebody I trusted, and they were willing to pull the rug over me from under me for money, you know. And it was just kind of like, only later in my journey I got reached out by the person who was the hiring person for that project, and was like, we listened to your files, man, and there was nothing wrong with them. Like, we realized it was this person, it wasn't you, but, you know, you've gone through this mindset now that, shit, man, I'm really rubbish at this. Like, I'm not really good at what I'm doing. Clearly I'm not supposed to be here, you know. And so, like, in 2016 I kind of killed that dream a little bit, and I just went, you know what, games are not for me. You know, I've tried applying. By this point I think I must have, I've said it before, like a book size of rejections if I printed them out, of all these companies, which, you know, I work with now, which is weird to say, but they all these rejections. And, like, on paper, you know, I was never hired. You know, it's a lot of mine comes from, which we'll talk about later, is like, you know, getting to know people and stuff. And it's just like, it kind of kills you a little bit, because you're like, well, I thought I was good enough, man. I left college, I left uni, I've done really well there, and I've done really well here, but I'm being told I'm rubbish. So why carry on? Just stop. And that's when I decided to stop it. And I think I only started again during COVID because there was a demand for work and there wasn't enough people to do it. So it was just being available in the right place in the right time. But, I can reflect a little bit more in the next slide. I'll move on if everyone's all right with that.
Yeah, by all means, go for it.
So it's understanding what went wrong. This is for me the harder one because, like I said, it started around 2016. I'd given up on the industry. I had sort of accepted that I was never good enough for it. I tried so hard and I just got rejections, even to the point where a recruiter had messaged back, because I had messaged and I was like, hey, look, I saw there's this job, I've applied, and then didn't respond. And obviously follow up and follow up and follow up. And like from sales, that's what you do. You follow up and you follow up until they say, nah, mate, it's not happening. And in the end, I just got this email saying, hey, look, you're just not good enough for the industry, man. Like that was kind of the paraphrasing of this email. It was just like, you're not good enough for this industry. You're not going to be in this industry. You should try something else. And that's from a games recruiter who's still in circulation now, by the way. So I just kind of was like, well, okay, well, if they said I'm not good enough and I'm not getting hired, I'm clearly not good enough. And so that kind of spiraled. And I think this is all in hindsight, by the way. So it's looking back at these events. In 2019, I just hit a point in my mental health where I really declined quite massively. I was in a 12-year relationship that just ended abruptly. I was in this space of like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know where I want to be. I'm working in live events at this point. So I'm working stupid hours. I'm, getting in at 3 a.m. and going back out at 6 a.m. And, and I'm just like so tired and so drained. It just pushed me to the point. And this is when I realized I'd been self-harming and attempted suicide. So this is where I kind of made the realization that this isn't right. Something's not right here. Obviously failed at the attempt. And so looking back at that, it's just like, okay, well, I can't even get a job in the industry and I can't even kill myself correctly. Like, what the hell, man? Like, what's going on? I need to turn the glass inwards, and I need to sort of, look at myself internally and go, well, how do I fix this? Because this isn't working. And it just come to realize that looking back, I was putting too much pressure on myself. Like I was trying to keep busy around a busy work life. And it used to stress me out so much when you'll be working and you'll see a job ad come up. Then you'll go, oh my God, that's a sound designer job. That's what I want to do. And you then, you rush home after your work or whatever, and you're then trying to craft a CV to that specific ad, trying to make it personable, tailor a show reel together, trying to put a thing. And it's just kind of like you're doing that every time and trying to be the first, like nobody told you how to do this thing. And it's kind of like in hindsight, you just kind of go, just apply and you'll get it. When they'll go through the applicants, it's not about who the first person they come across is the best person. It's just like, like Alex, when she does her hiring, she'll get like everybody and then do a review of everyone. It's not about being the first, but you don't know this thing and you rush out and you're just trying to get your CV in as quick as you can and you're putting all this pressure on yourself. Trying to do that as well, managing a couple of jobs, it's just like, it's draining. And then looking back now, I kind of feel like maybe the company wasn't right for me. Like maybe I why did I do that? Like, I'm applying for jobs. Why? Because I want a sound design job. Like I'm applying for a job for a studio that's halfway across the country. And it's just like, this isn't right, And so I kind of now take a lot of pressure off myself. Like I don't apply for things unless I really want to, like if I see a studio that has a lot of morals that I like, if I like the people, if I like the games that they do, that's when I would then consider maybe touching that base if I was to come out of my freelance lifestyle to a full-time position. I didn't trust anyone. Like I said before, like, growing up, I was bullied. I was used a lot by friends, just because, that was what they did, and I never really had any real friendships and I never really trusted anyone. And after being used, it kind of really pushed that nail in a bit further. And I'm being like, oh, look, I really can't trust anyone. Like I'm on this alone, which is the wrong headspace to be in when you're like trying to navigate something, trying to put too much pressure on yourself and trying to do it alone. It's really hard, and so you spiral. I made no meaningful connections and I had nobody to learn from because of that, you know, because I wasn't networking. I didn't know about networking. I didn't even know it was a thing until, you know, Alex sort of introduced me into that world. I didn't know that I could go and talk to people and not be doing this by myself. I didn't take care of my mental health again. I didn't realize I had a mental health concern until the suicide. So it's just like, you know, now I take it quite seriously, and I look at it, you know, I sort of internalize a lot more now. Debt was the contributor as well. Like I said before, having to work 2 jobs just to try and do the thing you want to do. Sometimes you can't. I mean, you know, up until 2019, if I remember off the top of my head, I was probably 40K in debt with credit cards and overdrafts and loans, and, you know, put things on finance because you can't afford them outright, but you need them. You know, it's just kind of like it spirals, you know, and you're like, now I'm never leaving my overdraft. At this point, I was always in my overdraft, and it was just like, I don't know what it's like to be out of my overdraft, and I'm always getting, you know, fines, not fines, but, you know, interest and, you know, minimum payments that were more than what I actually could make at being added, and compounding and just adding to that stress. But I think in reflection, I wasn't in the right headspace. So for me, it was just like, you know, even if I did get hired at that point, I'm just moving that issue somewhere else. I'm not really focusing on myself anymore. I'm just sort of going, I got a job, cool, great. Yeah, no, it's like, wow, okay, that survives for about, like, anything. You apply for a new job, you get a new job, like we're working in the catering industry and stuff. Okay, cool, that's a short fix. But then a week later, a month later, you start to go, well, okay, this isn't where I want to be. So, you know, I needed to move my headspace to somewhere where I was comfortable to sort of explore it and challenge it, I guess you could say. Because there's nothing worse than challenging yourself and going, hey, look at you, what's wrong with you, you know? So what did I do then? Just literally, as I said, that started to challenge my negative thoughts. And I do have a slide on that as well for anybody who is interested on how to do that. I gave myself rules and boundaries. This is through therapy, by the way. So this is kind of like, they gave me I had to write some rules about myself and some boundaries that I'm willing to sort of push. Yeah, and I had to write a personal statement of how I was feeling at the time. And that was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And by that, I just meaning, like, you know, how you look at yourself currently in this moment, you know. I won't share that because I mean, I can, but I won't, but because it's quite triggering maybe to some people who might be in that same headspace, but I'm happy to talk to people about that. But it was a lot of looking at yourself going, the man, like, what's wrong with me? Where am I at? Like, and so I had to then start challenging those and start giving myself rules to say, like, you know, stop putting yourself down. Like, I agree that, you know, I need time to reflect and to learn to appreciate other people. You know, I need to stop being destructive and pushing myself for having bad thoughts. You know, I agree that I am worth the time and effort to those around me. You know, these are things that I was sort of struggling with, being like, well, you know, nobody wants to know me, or nobody really wants my time. You know, nobody really gives a monkey who I am. So I had to challenge those thoughts. Start making friends again. That was really hard. It was actually Bumble Friends that kind of saved me a little bit, because my therapist, after like talking through my suicide and stuff, and she said, do you have anybody you like to talk to? And I said, I don't have anyone, like not even my own family, you know, like I have literally no one, which is sad when you look at it and you kind of go, wow, you know, I was at that point and there was nobody who could save me. And that's kind of like the point we're trying to get with Alex's game. It's like, you know, you need to look at yourself really a bit. Making friends was probably my saving point for me anyway. And that sort of paved the way of being like, hey, there are nice people out there. There are people that do want to be my friend, and I can sort of start to trust. And over time, and again, I think a lot of this is reinforcement, like talking about it more. Like I said, you know, being transparent about these experiences, talking, like, you know, I can comfortably talk about the suicide now because I've said it enough. You know, you need to normalize the conversation. You need to sort of be like, you know what, I'm going to talk about it. I'm not comfortable making friends, but I'm going to have to, because that's the only way I'm going to. And then through practice and, you know, going over these things, it becomes easier. So, you know, when you're at a networking event and you have trouble with those things, just being mindful that, you know, maybe letting a barrier down here and there might be a useful thing for you. You know, lining with the right people is probably the right thing. for me, by association. That's how I see it. So if like for example yourself, I know that you're a nice person. I've known you not very long, but I've known you long enough that I could trust that you are a decent person. So then anybody who's associated with yourself, I could probably trust that you wouldn't align with bad people. Or you shouldn't align with bad people. People do, but it's I just have that trust that what, if you're friends with that person and they're helping you and you're helping them, then there's something I should sort of be involved with as well. Which is where the starting to help people come in. I found my therapy, I guess you could say, was helping people. So like when I was going through my bad points, I got a lot of relief from helping someone, and I think it takes your mind off of it a little bit. So when you're trying to help somebody, maybe they're going through something negative themselves, and you go, hey, do you know what? I'm going through stuff. You're going through stuff. Let's just talk. Let's just go and have a chat, and then through that you can bond and you can create those friendships. But if anything, you're just helping somebody, and that's a good thing. Helping people for me was what kind of pushed me to sort of start thinking about things differently and challenging myself, and sort of being like, well, if I'm not in it for me, because I'm not, my personal statement about myself is I absolutely hate myself. I don't like myself at all. But if I can help somebody else, then that's a sort of a little bit of a a nice feeling I could have. At least I'm doing something positive somewhere. Thank you. But trying to see things differently was something I always try to do. So like if somebody is having a bad day and they're quite rude with you, if they're quite rude to you or whatever, maybe they're just having a bad day. But maybe they're not an asshole, maybe they're not a bad person, maybe maybe there's something else going on beneath the surface. So it's trying to look at things in a different way, and that's what I will sort of bring up in my challenging of my spiral. These are sort of questions I ask myself quite a lot. Especially applying for work as well, especially coming from a low income background, especially from a working class background, where you kind of go, well, I've got these barriers and I'm not getting this job. Why am I not getting this job? Is it because I'm not good enough? That's the first assumption. It's like, okay, what evidence do I have to support that narrative? Well, okay, I didn't get the job. Okay, cool. But like, what other alternatives are there? Okay, well, I looked at the job online and there's been 2,000 applicants. So maybe I've just not heard anything because they're still going through stuff. So because I haven't heard anything doesn't mean it's a rejection. If anything, it's just kind of like, okay, well, there's other things going on. Maybe the person who's doing the hiring is on holiday and they're just waiting for them to come back. Maybe there's something else in the works that's why I've not got this job, or at least not got the notification that I've got this job. Maybe they didn't hire in the end at all. That's also another thing to look at. Maybe they applied, and we've done it before with SilverScript, where we put up a thing about looking for somebody, and then like budgets change, and we're like, actually, we're not really doing that now, but we are still going to have that in mind, but just not yet. So there's other ways to look at why you might not have got the acceptance, or at least an interview or something. Maybe they're just too busy and they just haven't got to you. I'm respectful that when I now apply for work, I only try to apply for the studios I want to, because I don't want to add to somebody else's workload for the sake of just putting a job in. Like I could get the job, I could not get the job. Chances are I won't, and that's fine. I just accept that. But the worst that could happen is I just don't get it. But what can I do with that? Well, I could learn from that. I could look at that job. I can say, well, okay, well, they really needed these skills. This is where I should sort of put my focus, instead of just aimlessly applying and shooting a CV into the void of the internet and hoping that someone will pick it up. Be like, well, okay, I didn't get that. What can I learn from that? Okay, well, maybe I need to network more. Maybe I need to go out more. Maybe I need to make more connections. Maybe I need to brush up my CV. Like I said, on paper, I've never been hired, even to this day. Doing what I do, the games I've worked on, I've never been hired based on my CV or my cover letters. Like, it's just not worked. I don't know how to do it. So I don't want to offer advice to anybody who might be going, well, do I need to type it up my CV, or what do I need to do? It's like, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. All I know is my experiences shifted when I looked after myself. you know, when I kind of went, hey man, what's going on? Where should I put this time? Where should I put this effort? Who should I talk to, etc., etc., etc. But I always asked, was it meant to be? If I didn't get the job, was it really meant to be? Like, you know, was I the best version of myself at the time of applying? Like I said earlier, like, no, you know, I'm just shifting my problems to a different job. And then, you know, now I'm in this job and everyone's going to see that actually I'm got a lot going on. And, you know, if they're from a company that don't really respect mental health, I'm not saying there's many that do, but like, you know, that don't respect that, because it's quite a big thing at the moment, like talking about it. But like, 2010, I don't think people were talking about mental health, or to my understanding, you know. So it's kind of like in 2010, if I'd gone into a job and I'd gone, hey man, I'm really depressed today, you know, I need a day to reflect, they probably would have gone, mate, we need somebody else, you know. Or may not. And I mean, this is assumptions, you know, I've no evidence to support that. But you know, looking it back, I wasn't in the best place. I was in debt. You know, I was in, you know, I was in a quite a not a great relationship. I was working jobs around really toxic people. My job hunting was just out of desperation, I think, was probably the real point. You know, like, it wasn't because I wanted the job. I just wanted to get out of my situation. You know.
I've just I definitely found that a lot of people sort of say like their best opportunities occur not when they're desperate to leave their current environment, but kind of when they get to choose to leave their current environment. I guess it's a point of privilege to be like, oh, just go get a job that you're comfortable with, and everything will be fine. But you know, sort of genuinely, a lot of people kind of want to jump into the dream job instantly, and they want the dream job to happen now. But often finding a comfort point, finding a point that you know you could be just fine for 3 years, and then after a year and a half start to kind of re-engage with that job search, because you are comfortable and you know that you can survive where you are for another year and a half, for another 2 years, you know. I was lucky to have done that when I moved into this industry. I worked a job that actually gave me quite a lot of free time. I had quite a lot of brain space to think about my next move and go to the networking events, as opposed to when I was in hospitality and restaurants and beverage, like food and beverage, where I wanted to get out of all of those jobs. You know, at the time that I left, I often moved into something that was barely better because of that desperation to leave my current environment. And yeah, so there's an awareness there that, you know, if you're really trying to leave your current environment, you often don't end up in a better location. You often shift the problem, as you were saying.
But it's looking at it as well, like, was the job right for me in the first place? And it's like, you know, I majored in sound design, you know, I have a degree in that, and I work in dialogue. It's just crazy. Like, I didn't realize, you know, I like sound design. I'm not very confident as a person that what I would deliver would be good enough, you know, because there's a lot of creativeness about it. It's like, you know, an artist or something. If you're just told to come up with something, it's your creative freedom. Like, I always kind of question, is that good enough? Did I go too hard? Did I not go hard enough? Like, you know, and for me, mentally at this point anyway in my life, yeah, it's too much stress, and I didn't really do it. But I didn't realize I would want to be a dialogue editor. I didn't realize that was a job. You know, it's only when you know, I met Alex, and she introduced me to that world, and through like lockdown, I had started doing some work for her because there was just too much and there wasn't enough dialogue editors. It's such a niche industry, a niche part of the audio industry anyway, that I didn't realize that's what I wanted. So if I'd gone into a sound design job, would I have been in the right headspace to do that work? Would I have just been criticizing myself all the time? Would I have just not been able to accept that what I was doing was good enough? Would I have just put all this extra pressure on myself? And it was only now working in dialogue that I've gone, well, actually, I don't really care for sound design that much. You know, like, I love it. I would love to do dialogue design, where the implementation of the pair, but I've come to learn that dialogue is for me. I love the storytelling. I love listening to how the story unveils, you know, and a lot of it before anybody else. It's great, you know, you get to hear these things, but you do get to work on some really creative writing, and it's just nice because every time you're working through a file, especially if you're doing them sequentially, you're just like, you're hearing the story unravel, and you're just like, oh my god, I want to know more, like, what's going on, which you don't get with any other thing. So like, at least for me, that was kind of like, well, if I'd gone down the sound design job and I got the sound design job, I wouldn't have discovered this. And this actually, I think, for me as a person, helps me a lot. It takes away the pressure from up here. It takes away a lot of the stress. It takes away a lot of the anxiety around, am I doing the right job? Am I doing the best job? You know, like, yeah, in reflection, like I would obviously do the sound design for Silverscript Games, like on their game, The Quiet Things, and it's just kind of like, I don't feel it's sound designy enough. Like I kind of feel like, you know, I could be blowing things up. I could be doing all these crazy, you know, sound design effects. And you kind of go, no, man, just a simple picking up and putting down of a cup. You know, that's all that's needed. But I kind of go, is there more? Could I be doing more? Like, am I being creative? And that's just a simple game. Now imagine if you're put on a game where you are blowing things up and you're just like, oh, how much do I do this? Like, what do I do? And it's just kind of like, if I'm not in the right headspace all the time on a simple game, would I be in the right headspace on a more complex game that now requires implementation, that now requires all these other things that, you know, I know how to do, I just don't have it in me to do it in a pressured environment as much, you know, like, so dialogue design for me is probably where I would want to go. But you know, it would be a real kind of like, if this is the real project, otherwise I'm just not, this doesn't interest me. I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and that's kind of the healing for me, I guess you could say. It's, you know, to actually get up in the morning and actually lift my head out of the pillow and go, do you know what, today is a good day, I'm going to do this again, you know. So nice. It's just not a lot to think about. So I guess it's like, does it still happen? You know, now I've got 64 credits and all these films and games, and, you know, sort of, I would say, semi-successful in this space. Yes, it does. It absolutely does. You know, like, you do have moments every time, and I think this is where imposter syndrome kind of comes in as well. I always ask myself these questions, you know, like, I go to a networking event and it could be like, did I talk too much to somebody? Did I not spend enough time talking to somebody? Did I take too much of somebody's time so they could talk to somebody else? Because ultimately, when I network, I just network to make friends. I don't network to make connections in a workspace environment. Like, I think for me, a lot of my successes of working on these games have come from people that I know. And it's not about who you know. It's just like, you're the right person at the time for that specific role. You know, I believe in unbiased hiring practices. I always do. But, you know, as a freelancer, you just got to take whatever, because they're not in a space to be hiring. They just go, can you do it? Yes, you can. Here's files. You know, so for a lot of people, when they network, it's their business, it's their life. You know, it's what they want. They need those things in order to get, you know, potentially get a job. But I just had this mindset of, these are just friends I haven't met yet. And if I meet you, I'll meet you, but I'll meet you at some point. Like, you know, I took a lot of pressure off when I go to a networking event going, hey, here's me, here's my life story, here's what I can do, and info dumping this onto somebody who's literally just had a long day and they just want a beer and chat. You know, it's just like, they're not interested in me dumping all that stuff on them. They just want to chill out and just hang out with people and stuff. And so by removing that, I must info dump on you, you know, I can leave that information, and I will meet you again. If you're coming to this networking event, I'm sure I'll see you at the next one. Like, how many times have I bumped into you? Like, you know, yeah, exactly. And it's just kind of like, we just meet each other all the time, and it's nice just to go up and give somebody a hug and go, hey man, how are you? How's life? And just sort of take that like pressure off, because they will learn about you over time. And that's kind of a key thing I found when I network. It's just like, you don't need to drop it at once. You can drop it over, yeah, if they ask. I don't like to just drop things. I never drop credits. If anything, I actually get really awkward around credits now, because I'm just a bit like, it feels like a brag in a way. But, you know, people ask. People don't know who I am, and they want to know what I've done. And if they ask, I'm happy to tell it. But I always try to move back to a reasonable, like, so, you know, how are you? What have you been up to? And, like, you know, I guess it's just a self-confidence thing. I don't like talking about myself a lot. So when you ask me to do this talk, I'm like, oh my God, you want me to talk about myself for an hour? Like, Jesus, like, like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm obviously doing all right, but like,
you're doing a great job, yeah.
But, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm going, oh my God, people want to get back to lunch. You know, they're just done. But these are just sort of things I ask myself. Like, it could be down to whether I'm getting work or not, you know. Like, I guess this year alone, I've worked 2 temp jobs as well. So you think, oh yeah, all these credits, you must be doing all right. No, not always, you know. Like, there's always that stress that you never know when the next. And I guess the redundancies, although the redundancies haven't affected me personally, like, I've not been made redundant from these things, you know, the redundancies has made a knock-on effect for people in the freelance space as well. So like, actors are not getting booked for work because the games aren't being done yet. They're having to put a hold on development because they're losing people, which is a sad thing. But that also means we as freelancers don't get that. We don't get this information. We just get told there's no more work, and you have no idea, is this a temporary thing? When is it going to pick back up again? Should I take other work? Should I not take other work? So you get to this point of like, if I say yes to this work and you happen to drop a week's worth of work on me, am I not going to be around to be able to do it? So it really does mess with this mindset of like, what ifs. What if I don't do this? What if I don't do that? What if I do this? What if I do that? So it does add to that, personal situations as well. So not only is it hard to try and find the work, to sustain the work, whether I should even take other work, life things get in the way. Like my father died this year, and it's just kind of like, this extra stress on the shoulder. So you then go to networking events, and you've got to try and stay positive, and people go, hey, how are you? And you're just like, I'm lying through my teeth, like, yeah, I'm great. And it's just like, that's not for them to have to worry about. That's for you to worry about. But in the next slide, I guess, is how you can improve those things. At least for me anyway, is how I managed to improve those things and try not to put too much on my shoulders. So my other improvements, this is just where I've kind of realized through experience and hindsight, and now looking back, had I had this information when I was trying in the first time of freelancing, maybe I would have been in a better place. But engaging the community was quite important. Going to jams, socials, and networking. If anything, we go to a lot of networking. If you go to networking, you obviously see us around quite a lot. Me and Alex are at literally everything, as much as we can anyway, especially in the southern area, because that's kind of within reach of where we are. Align with the people who bring you the best version of yourself, and equally for you to them, so it's kind of like, being around negative people brings out the negative parts in your life. So I try to now align with the right people, like I was saying earlier, like if people that I know like you and that you're aligning with them, I can probably trust somewhere along the lines that they're going to be okay to talk to, and they probably have the same values as I do with trying to help people and trying to make the place a better place, and trying to encourage more people to come into the industry and to sort of talk about mental health and stuff. So I found through being with Alex that anybody that she aligns with is probably a good person. And so I've just had to accept that, although I had this little bit of a trust issue on my shoulder, if they're friends with you and you're friends with them and you've been friends with them for years and they've not given you any red flags, it's probably a good thing to talk to them and be a bit honest. And I guess trying to maintain those positive friendships, like we can only do so much through networking, but it's nice to reach out afterwards and talk to people and go, hey, look, we're going for food. Do you want to come? And I found championing other people was my success for how I kind of become happier in my life. It's lovely, if you're going through a bit of rubbish time and you're trying to apply for jobs and you're not really getting the work, and you don't really know why, being around people who are succeeding is fantastic. It's a lovely feeling. It's almost like you kind of feel successful for them. It's just kind of like, oh wow, mate, you're great, this is awesome. And you never know where these people go on. Like they'll be successful, they might get headed up at an audio team somewhere and they need to now hire people, and who are they going to come to? People that they love and trust and they respect and stuff. So it's kind of nice to sort of be on that nice side of people, championing them. And if nothing comes of it, like I don't make friends with people because I'm after something. Like if I've friends with people who were never in a position to be able to give me work, and that's fine. If anything, I can help them, or try to help them if I can. Can you do more for yourself? Learning a new skill. Again, looking at job ads for me was like, okay, well they seem to keep mentioning source control. Maybe I should learn a bit about source control because that's important to a game studio, but not people talk about. Like you go to a sound design course somewhere, they're not going to talk about source control, they're not going to talk about these things. It's like, well, maybe I should learn these things because ultimately it's going to help me, if not for me to make my own game, so it gives me something to I now know, but it also adds something to my CV. Be kind to yourself, I guess, is another one. If you didn't get the job, that's not a reflection on you. You did the best you can, but talking to yourself, talking to people, sorry, talking to yourself. I talk to myself. That's okay. It's good to clear the head, but talk more. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and be vulnerable to people is also kind of a thing. And like, yeah, I was talking to a friend recently, and they're going through a little bit of a situation, and they were worried about reaching out and asking for help because we're really busy, and don't want to impact on that. It's like, mate, if I'm saying to you, do you want to help? I'm offering, like, take it. People don't say, hey, if you want to have a chat about looking at your CV, they're not just being nice. They want to help. Take it, do it. Like, you'll be surprised. But it's okay to ask. I'm learning that quite heavily. It's okay to ask, and it's just nice. Yeah, people check in when you go to networking. People always kind of go, how are you? And they know that there's a lot going on up here, and it's nice. I'm not dumping this stuff on somebody if they didn't ask. But if somebody's like, hey, do you want to go and have a chat for 5 minutes because I'm just like, I want to know how you are, do it. Take it. Honestly, it helps a lot. And if you're in the industry and you have imposter syndrome, for me, it helped a lot by mentoring, go through Limit Break. It was like, well, I kind of felt like I was given an opportunity by Alex. I kind of felt like I overstepped a lot of people because of somebody who I know. So let me do the same back. Let me help somebody else, because ultimately that's how we move along. And there's no point gatekeeping stuff. I don't like gatekeeping contacts and stuff. It's like, if the contact's okay for me to share it, I'll share it. Why not? We're all in it together, man. Like, let's try to be positive and try to help yourself a little bit more. So I guess if you're from outside of those areas and you're trying to look into get into the games industry, or you're getting a lot of rejection by credits, just come to networking events, come to make friends, and just come to sort of just be a part of it. Even if you don't have any credits, even if you've not done anything. Like, I bumped into a guy coming back from, I think it was WS, no, it was EGX, maybe EGX last year, and he was a graphics designer, and he had never done this sort of thing before, but he wanted to get into games. We happened to have a game jam. The global game jam was coming up. It's like, come along, man. And he's just like, yeah, but maybe I'm not good enough. It's like, no, come along. Don't put any pressure on yourself. Just come along and just observe. And then when you're there, you might feel comfortable and go, actually, I can do a sprite or an asset or something, just that small contribution, and put it in the game, and you can see it. It's like, wow, I could do this. This is something for me. I can do this. It takes a lot of the mysticism away from what it's like to make games, and just sort of helps people, and it connects you. You never know. You might go on to make that game at a game jam, and then that game becomes a global success. And now you're hired as a part of the team. It's just, you just never know. But don't limit yourself because you don't think you're good enough. And that was kind of where I kind of drew the line, because it was like, accepting that I should be here. That's probably my kindness to myself, if I have to be honest. Evolving in the communities. This is just a quick one for anybody who's interested. Obviously into games and stuff like that, do great stuff. I put game dev local. These are just local to me, being close to London and Guildford. But there are other communities, especially in the audio world. Like, you have like Liverpool, good buddy Steve, he's running that up there, and he's doing really well. There's one in Southampton, Brighton, Bristol has one. Like, there are communities. Go, look them up. And if you just want to get involved, if you're not sure about your skills and stuff, and you just want to give it a little practice, they have a nice virtual game jams section where you can go and join a Discord and talk to people, and get some help, get some advice. Like I said, you never know who you're talking to. And when I network, that's always a key mindset. I never know who I'm talking to. Try to stay positive as much as you can, because somebody's listening. You just don't know who, and they could be the person that's the hiring person for a studio, or the head of a studio, or the head of an audio team, or somebody. You just don't know who's around you. But as soon as you pull into that negative mindset, it can come across quite easily, I think. And you don't want to be seen as a negative person, especially if you do have a lot going on. So I tend to leave a lot at that door until the networking's over. But I'm always now mindful of my challenge to myself is, don't get sucked in, man. Like, just stay positive and talk about things, and you never know. So I hope that was kind of enough rambling for people. I did, like I
Nice.
said, the QR code is there for everybody. You might be like, hey man, I like what you said about networking, but I'm not sure where to go. Reach out. We can look at where you can find somewhere close to you, maybe
I think
stuff like
like,
that.
yeah, easily one of the biggest things that anyone can do. If you're watching this and you're like, I have learned so much, but there's still so much I don't know. I think like ask, ask the
Yeah.
questions. You don't know what you don't know, but often other people do. And other people can really fill in those blanks and really help you figure
Do
out.
you know what? I have a mindset of there's no such thing as a stupid question.
Hmm,
Like if you don't know it, you don't know it, and it might
exactly.
seem really like other people know this. How do you not know that kind of thing? But if you don't know, you don't know. Like just ask. It's not hard to go. Oh yeah, no, man, that's that.
Especially as we're trying to build like an industry in a world that's more accessible, right? And it's like
Mm,
it's kind of unfair to assume that people have had access to the exact same like education and the exact same like touch points of knowledge that you have. So
mm,
sometimes someone's like, oh, I've never heard of this seemingly obvious thing. The best thing you can do in that scenario is not say like, what, how come, what has stopped you from learning about this thing? Oh my god, that's so
mm.
crazy. Just skip to the point where you just tell them and you
Yeah.
share and you help them and you're
Do you
like,
know what? I made this mistake once when I was working at Anderton's at the time, and somebody came in and said, "Oh, they want advice about subwoofers," and I mean, this is when I first kind of, because I was not in a great space, and I just laughed and went, "It's a subwoofer. What's there to know?" And like by the time I'd gone up
yeah,
to sort of deal with like, obviously they must have overheard, but they left, and it was like, oh my god, I must have really embarrassed that person. Like, what the hell's wrong with me? Like, why did I do that? But for me, it was just like, it's common knowledge, mate. And that's for me is a good reflection of, you don't know where people are at. They might be really damn nervous to come and talk to you, and they just want to know that one thing, and you just give them the time, give them the space, make them feel valid.
I
Like
mean,
I said, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Just ask it.
Kevin, here and now, I'll say, like, I work with audio, voice acting. I edit my own sound on Reaper. I've got a
Mm,
vinyl player. I collect video game soundtracks on vinyl and things like that.
yeah.
I used to like make coffee in a music store. I'm not really sure I know what a subwoofer is, all right? So,
Mm, 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 mm.
so if you've got that question in the audience, don't worry, so do I. But we're not going to get that question answered. We're going to stay on topic. So, first of all,
Yeah, yeah.
um, with this slide, you've got thank you there, but Kevin, thank you from myself. Thank you for delivering all that information, for really taking us just so much into sort of what that these kind of what those 30 years is sort of from the age of 13 onwards,
Mm,
what that experience has been like for you, kind of navigating a just quite a harsh professional environment,
mm,
and dipping out of that, in and out of that, and really sort of with the context of your mental health and your relationship with kind of negative behavior traits and things like that. Thank you for just being honest and sharing all that. And thank you to the audience right now, who have been chatting with us. Our audience is split amongst some of you are on YouTube. Hello to the people on YouTube. And some of you are on LinkedIn. Hello to the people on LinkedIn. Some people might be watching this on YouTube, but in the future, that is to say, they'll
mm,
be
mm.
watching back this live stream. So hello to everyone in the future. Thanks to everyone who's been chatting. Thanks to everyone who's engaging. Thanks to everyone who's just been really supportive and lovely. Kevin, I don't know if you can see any of these chats or comments, or if StreamYard lets you do this in any way, but
No, I think it's probably a good thing that I don't, because I with ADHD, I guess it's like I just go off on that way, and I'll be like, I've forgotten what I should be talking about, and like it's
this
probably good
is
to try and stay on topic.
this is why I do more live streaming and less presenting, because
Yeah.
I read out the chat all the time.
Mm,
But just so you know, like, people have been so engaged with what you've been saying. There's been so much like understanding, and so much just like people really relating to what you're saying, and people really kind
mm,
of sharing their stories as well, in chat. So just thank you to the audience members who have been sharing their stories and saying really lovely things, really so much. We can go back through some of it in a bit, but first of all, just a heads up, Kevin, how are you doing for time, by the way, time and energy? Because
yeah. I mean,
we're over 2 o'clock, but we can if you're up
I'm
for
happy
chatting
to
a bit
stick
more.
around, and people want me to stick around. Like, I'm going to a networking thing tonight, which is in Guildford. So if anybody is going to that, you can always sort of find me there. there's a thing on Friday, there was a thing on Monday, there was a thing on last Friday. You know, like important to mention about the ADHD and networking is it can fatigue you a lot, especially if you, especially yeah, I come out of these things and I am so exhausted, but all it takes is that one person to reach out and go, hey, you know what? I was talking to you, like, and it did happen on Monday. It happened a couple of times, and they go, do you know what? If any conversation is worth it, this conversation has made the entire night, and you just have that kind of, oh man, I feel really good about that. So even though I'm really tired and really fatigued and working till 3 a.m. and stuff, it's still okay. Like, you know, like people need it, and that's I'm okay to give it if that's gonna help somebody. You know, I feel like I'm in a bit of a privilege having worked on all these things and sort of now being able to help people, especially like through mentoring as well. Like I've always wanted to do that, and I always felt like, for me anyway, I was just like, nobody, especially Limit Break, I people who know me well would know that I used to say, like, why does nobody needs to learn from another generic white guy? Like, what do I have to, what are my struggles? Like, you know, I'm not somebody from an underrepresented background. I mean, ADHD I guess now kind of does qualify that, but you know, I was like, I don't need, people don't need to hear from me. They need to hear somebody, a woman or a woman of color, or somebody of, you know what I mean, like, is somebody who's actually lived those hardships. And so I put a lot of pressure on myself to be like, I want to help, but I don't know how. And then when you mentioned neurodivergent, I was like, oh my god, I could help. Look, this is awesome. You
And
know, and if anything, that's probably more rewarding than the 64 credits, honestly. Like, I'd quite happily trade some of that just to sort of help people.
And I think, you know, please don't discount as well that everything you've just talked about, I think is more than representative of actual hardships that you have been through, you know, and they are yours uniquely. And I think, you know, into games, we are definitely talking more about the language of coming from a working class background, coming from a low income background, not having access to the resources that can help you succeed later in life. And when we see resources, like, I suppose we are often thinking about educational and technological, but there's an element there as well where it's like, well, what about the mental health faculties? What about therapy? What about other like educated individuals in your network who can talk with you in like just a way that's like empathetic and like helping you work through a problem, rather than, you know, kind of lads who kind of go to the pub and drink away their sorrows for 15 years in a row, and just understanding that if you don't have access to that network, those individuals, those resources, and you're not in a community that have the vocabulary to speak to you and from an empathetic sort of, you know, element of saying, it sounds like you need your mental health support, it sounds like this is a problem, then how are you supposed to succeed? You know, the barriers to success are just so diverse and many, and they come in so many different shapes and forms.
I was going to say, with the community as well, like, I didn't realize until I guess developed this year, just how many people are sort of, it's going to sound really sad, but like me, because yeah, up until this point, I was just a bit like, nah, nobody likes me, man. Like, I'm just that guy. And you know, like when my dad died, I only told a couple of people, but it got round, and it not in a negative way. Like, people did reach out and go, hey, look, I know you're going through some hardship. I'm really sorry. Do you want to chat? And I was always like, no, I don't want to inconvenience you. I don't want to inconvenience you. And like a good buddy of mine from Guildford, like we went to a quiz thing in Brighton, and I don't know if you were at that one, maybe, I don't know. It's one of the industry quiz things that they do.
I'm aware of them, but they're often somewhere else in the country.
They're amazing to attend to. Like Alex, the guy who takes care of that, is really lovely. And yeah, one of the guys on our team just came in with a bag of beer because he knows I like drinking Blue Moon. Blue Moon is my creative juice, I guess you could say. Like, I wrote an entire novel just sitting in a pub, you know, like 180,000 word novel, bearing in mind dyslexia is a thing, and just drinking Blue Moon every Tuesday. You know, I should have mentioned this in an earlier slide about, like, if you are in those negative mindsets and you are trying to break the industry, giving yourself time and doing the things that you love to do can also help. So for me, it was like, I just want to write. I have this book idea, and I just want to sit down, and I just want to be away from everyone. I just want to be in myself, and just sit with. And I told him this story once, you know, like, probably God knows however long ago, and then in he walks with this bag, and it was full of Blue Moon, like bottles of Blue Moon. It was just like, hey, look, I know, I'm really sorry that what you've been going through, but here's the thing, and I almost cried. I just sat there and I was like, my God, like people give a, keeping it censored. I did swear a couple of times. I do apologize, but yeah, people care, and people really care. And I was like, oh my God, like where have you been all my life? Like I kind of, and again, I feel like if I had come into this industry back then with that mindset of negativity and not reflecting on myself, would I have those same connections? Would people be as warming to me as they are now? Like it's taken a lot. Like Alex, my partner, she has taught me a lot. Credit to Alex, man. Like she has taught me a lot. Every time I have a negative thought, every time I have a negative thought, she challenges that and be like, yeah, but what else could what else could be going on? And when I've spiraled a little bit, she's like, well, no, let's talk, and like not once did she put pressure on me. Whereas like in previous relationships, I was compared a lot. So, I would be talking to somebody like, and they'd be like, oh, well, your friends, I've got a few friends who have gone on to be very, very successful in their industries. And you're like, well, you were at the same course as them. Why aren't you doing it? Why can't you be that successful? What are you doing? Are you lazy? Are you not taking it seriously? And then when you put those on your shoulders, you're like, bloody hell, man. But you just needed somebody to go, do you know what? That's fine. You do you. Let's figure that out in your own pace.
Yeah.
In your own time. And that industry is just, because of Alex, has just been so nice. Like she's restored a lot of my trust in people as well. So it's, I can't credit her enough, honestly. I'm so lucky to have her in my life as well. So and all the people like yourself, and I'm sure there's people probably, I don't know who's watching this, but there's probably other people who are watching this, and I'm like, you know what, great, love everyone.
Having like, having a single guide, having an advocate, or having a community that acts as your guide and advocate can just mean the whole world. One thing I'm just going to do now is I didn't make it very clear, but if you in the audience have a question, by the way, please put it in chat, and I will make sure that we get a chance to read it. We'll go for like another sort of 5-ish minutes. It's 22 past 2 at the moment, so we'll make sure that we're finished up by 2:30, just in case anyone's like, oh my God, I've been holding in a loo break this whole time and I really want to go. We'll go for a few more minutes. But one of the questions in chat that is like, it sort of comes up from that talk about community and things like that. So Dan Tonkin, I can actually bring this up on screen, Kevin, watch this. Boom. So Dan Tonkin says, Jonas, Kevin, is there a list of these networking events, etc.? So the way that itch.io keeps track of these game jams. Now, I think I have an answer for this, or maybe a few answers for this. But is there anything that you, in particular, Kevin, use when you want to know about your network?
I come from the audio background, so for me, Air Wiggles has been amazing. They have a big section of all the events coming up, especially those focused around audio. It's a free to join platform. The community is really nice. But they have all those things. Alex is, if I'm honest, that's a question for Alex a lot, because I'm just invited to stuff. Like I'll be working away and I get a ping on my calendar and it's like, oh, we're going to this drinks thing, or we're going to that networking event, or that indie showcase, or that conference. And I'm just like, yeah, sure, whatever. So she does a lot of that. But for audio specific, if you're not in the industry or whatever, if you are in the industry, you just want to make more friends, then I guess Air Wiggles has that. Unless you got anything else, Jodas, to add, like other resources.
So I do, and I'm just trying to figure out how easily can someone find this if they wanted to. So what I'll tell you about, for anyone listening, I'll tell you about two things. One, I'll tell you about, obviously, my Discord, the Intergames Discord. That has a channel called Industry Events, where every time there's a new conference or a new kind of, I don't know, showcase or expo or whatever, that will normally get shared in there. But often it might get lost in the kind of deluge of conversation that comes afterwards. So it's not very easy to kind of map that out to a calendar and see what's upcoming. So as such, I sort of have two more answers for you. One is gamesindustry.biz actually does have an events calendar. They are the larger events and they're worldwide. So it's where you can find out about all the worldwide conferences and expos and things like that. So those are big, less networking focused, but obviously big kind of industry events and things like that. And then the next one I'd recommend is actually a specific Discord. Now, here's what I would do is I have just Googled the words Games Industry Events Discord. Games Industry Events Discord. If you Google that and you go to the second or third results, you should get taken to the Twitter or the LinkedIn of one Emily Brown. Emily Brown runs their own Discord server called Games Industry Events Discord. And that Discord server is a dedicated space for local UK gaming events. That includes small-scale meetups. Just to give you an example,
myself.
it's a really great channel. Just in case you need a bit of an example, like Tuesday, Manchester Indie Dev Drinks. Thursday, LGDN Speaker Spotlight in Birkenhead. Game Dev in Cardiff. Saturday, Creator Meetup in Sheffield, etc. So these are regional cities all around the UK, just so that if you're if you're outside of London and you feel like there's nothing in your area, actually this server does a lot to dispel that perception, because admittedly there is less outside of London, but that doesn't mean there's nothing, and that server can often go a long way to helping you.
Also come to these things, like if like when we go to the audio meetups, there's a guy there, he comes in from Wales, to London. He just gets the train straight there, and it's like, if you're going to make the effort, you're going to make the connections.
Often, yeah, I find a lot of people, because there's so little of any scale in some areas of the country, some people do just travel a really long way for the small thing. But even if it's not sustainable,
money, that's the problem as well. That's the thing.
Yeah. But if it's not sustainable to do it frequently, but you could find a reason to go to London, like, once in a quarter or once a year, you could make a weekend of it, maybe use that as a chance to catch up with some family or whatever. Often, bundling a little games, networking, social in there is a really kind of good way to crunch it all in one.
I guess you could always say, just save all your coins and then do develop. Develop's a great one to go to.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, because develop 3 days. It is in one of the
intense.
one of the most inaccessible parts of the country, definitely. But you get your bang for your buck, because you don't even have to pay for the conference. You can just get the free pass, get yourself the cheapest Airbnb or shack up in a room with a bunch of other people, and then just go to all the spin out networking events. But anyways, I feel like I could talk about that as a specific subject for years. Dan, I hope that answers your question. And I'm just reading chat a little bit more. There's not too many other specific questions, especially not on the subject that you and I have spoken about earlier. Someone's asked specifically you, Kevin. It sounds like you're going to the upcoming Games Audio Guildford meetup. That sounds like the kind of place where someone could find you and say hello.
Yeah.
Not that I want to dox you and give away your.
No, we're quite heavily involved with the Guildford Games community and London Games communities as well. But we're quite heavily integrated with that. It's quite important to us. Like when we decided to buy a house, it was very clear that it had to be within commutable Guildford, commutable London, because the communities there are just so important.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like So it sounds like that comment came from MVS Music. So I'm sure at some point you'll be able to meet the.
If you come up to me, I have no idea what you look like. Just be like, "Hey, I'm MVS Music." Then I'll be like, "Oh, yeah, cool."
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think that takes us up to pretty much like 2:30. So what we'll do is we'll wrap it up there. But thank you, everyone, for just the absolute groundswell of support and love from everyone online. I know who MVS Music is. It's someone called Mia. Hello. Thank you for all the love and support for everyone who's been sort of with us for this entire talk. You've been just a lovely audience. You've been really amazing. Thank you for being so warm and kind. Kevin, at some point I'll make sure that you get a chance just to see some of these lovely words as well, because you deserve that. But thank you mainly to you, Kevin. You've got this, so many projects. You've got your Silver Script games, you're recording your albums, you're going to events all over the world, and yet you've made this time, you've carved out this 90 minutes, and you prepared this presentation. So Kevin, just thank you so much for doing this. It's so lovely.
Thank you for having me. I was surprised I had so much to talk about. I was just like, I'm going to be done with it in like 20 minutes, man.
And I think you've got like 10 more talks inside you, and over the years, I'm sure we'll get you back on for a few more. But if you're up for it. But until then, we'll keep seeing each other at events. There's all the mentoring and things like that. You're doing great work out there, Kevin. So just really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. And thank you to everyone to come in.
Nice. Yeah, appreciate it. To anyone sort of watching us live, this is the last event of this week. We come back next week with quite a slew of things, actually. On Monday, we're doing a Q&A with David Jenkins, a Q&A with David Jenkins, who is a QA sort of lead and comes from that background. David is actually leading a course with Into Games, one of those 3-week sprint courses that I mentioned earlier. And so that Q&A is a chance to learn a bit more about QA, learn a bit more about that course, learn a bit more about David. Come along to that if you are interested in quality assurance, but David's also a massive advocate for accessibility in the games industry, so there's a huge amount to talk about there. On Wednesday, we've got a discipline deep dive in marketing, really just trying to talk about some of the fundamentals of marketing. That'll be from Kat Welsford, who works for Splash Damage at the moment. And then on Thursday, I think we've got a portfolio review for people working in audio, for anyone that's got an audio portfolio, by Greg Lester, who I believe is one of the co-founders of Airwiggles, the audio community you're talking about earlier.
I love Greg. Greg and Lewis are just fantastic. I love them.
I've not spoken to Lewis yet, but Greg has come and done an event with this channel before, and we'll have Greg back next week. So just be aware, please. If you want to hear more about events, or you want to understand how the portfolio review works, etc., Into Games Discord down there. And by joining the Discord, you get access to a lot of what we've been talking about today, just in terms of like communities, resources, like trying to understand what other charities are doing, trying to understand what other resources and communities are out there to help you. And if you're in that negative space, like, come into that community, and just start a conversation, and fingers crossed that, you're able to build some kind of connections, and some opportunities that really help you in your life, in your career, and in your personal kind of development for the over the coming months and years. I think that's it from us.
As I say, if anybody wants to, they can just reach out anyway. Like, be patient. I'm very busy, but I'll try. Poke me if I don't respond, but I'm happy to help where I can.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's missed it, or anyone's just joining us at the last second, I'll bring it back. QR code up there for you. That'll get you to all of sort of Kevin's. Is it Linktree? I think it's a Linktree.
It's a Linktree. It has like my website if people are curious, and then like Instagram, not Instagram. LinkedIn. Sorry, I was like, I can't sound the right. No, yeah, LinkedIn and whatever people are comfortable using. I think they're all on there, like Instagram and Twitter and whatever.
Amazing stuff. If you need that QR code, it's just there for you, or if you've just missed it, then you're able just to scroll back to somewhere else, and it's throughout the entire presentation, so no worries. And then I think that's all from us. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. You've been a wonderful audience. Kevin, you've been a fantastic guest. Everyone have a great weekend, basically, because we won't see you tomorrow on the channel. So bye-bye for now, basically.
Bye-bye for now.